So today I'm really excited to be able to talk to Seth Godin, who is well known as an incredibly prolific blogger, the author of the #1 marketing blog on the internet, I believe, and 19 books, a couple of which have been profoundly impactful on my journey as an entrepreneur, as long back ago as 10 years when I first read Purple Cow, which we'll talk about here, I hope. And so Seth, thank you so much for being here. I'm really excited to spend a few minutes with you.
Let's rock and roll.
Well, let me just start by saying this is super exciting for me because I have been reading your books for a long time. I actually bought a copy of Purple Cow, which I see in the background of your room there, and that book had a pretty profound impact on the way I thought about growing a business at all, and I think that the conversation is now just a part of kind of like entrepreneurial culture, that being remarkable matters.
I'd start by saying in the last 12 years since I wrote that book, the thing that I predicted has accelerated far beyond my anticipation, which is attention is far more precious today than it has ever been before. Mm-hmm. And at the same time, as so many people have tried to hack and game the game of word of mouth is even more difficult to come by, yet it's more powerful than ever before. Mm-hmm. So now we're in this era where 1 million, 2 million, 5 million people being reached in 2 or 3 days with something that does not involve advertising is commonplace. Mm-hmm. It's commonplace for a new idea to blow up at that scale. And it's also commonplace for average stuff for average people to fade and disappear. Mm-hmm. That we see the J.C. Penney's of the world struggling, and they will continue to struggle until they are gone. Mm-hmm. That we see that one after another, people who can't keep up the pace of innovation on the path to creating something worth talking about are going to have to fade away. Because everything is a click away. Everything wasn't a click away when I wrote Purple Cow. You know, when I wrote Permission Marketing, most people didn't have an email address. Yep. And when I wrote Purple Cow, most people were spending 5 minutes, 10 minutes a day online. Now it's where we live, and we know how to use it. Mm-hmm. So if you're not the one worth talking about, we'll find someone who is.
Yeah. So that presents a huge challenge, right? Because while it's true that it's commonplace for you know a cat video to go viral and get 5 million views in a week, it's also not something that we've created a science around, and not terribly predictable, and it presents a pretty unique challenge, right? If the bar for people talking about you is millions of views. I mean, I've never created a video with millions of views. We don't have millions of views, on anything that we've done. So how do you go about even thinking about creating something that is remarkable on the scale of what's now commonplace?
All right. Well, let's divide viral or large-scale activities in 2 categories. One category is lightning strikes. Yeah. This is completely unpredictable, completely unanticipatable. Mm-hmm. That the reason it can't be predicted is every time it strikes, it burns down part of the forest and it changes things. Yeah. So you can't do it again. Right. And that's why, we see, a 250 million view music video going, and then we've never heard from the artist since, because all he knows how to do it again. Yeah. That part, I think, is for hobbyists. I think that part's for amateurs. Professionals, on the other hand, are doing something different. So I reach 1 million people every week, week in, week out, and probably will continue for a long time to come. Mm-hmm. Apple knows that when they do a keynote address, a large number of people are going to show up and then talk about it, et cetera, until they start selling people out and not keeping their promise. Mm-hmm. Zappos knows that they have the permission to talk to hundreds of thousands of shoe customers, and a large number of them will open the email. Mm-hmm. So the way you do it isn't all at once. It took me 20 years to be an overnight success. Mm-hmm. It means that you show up and you show up and you show up. So my friend Tina, who is Swiss Miss on Twitter, has almost 1 million Twitter followers. She didn't get 1 million Twitter followers at once.
Mm-hmm.
She got 1,000 Twitter followers every day for 1,000 days.
Mm-hmm.
And you show up and you show up and you do the work and you're generous and you feed the community and you do something worth talking about, and the skeptics won't like you and the haters will hate and the critics will criticize, but you will outlast them and then they will move on.
Yeah. So in that sense, things are not that different than they were, even a decade ago, where ultimately what you're talking about is sort of perseverance and determination and the sort of block and tackling of being remarkable in the sort of purple cow sense that, worth remarking about, day in and day out. So to me, that brings up a lot of the subject of your newest book, which is about overcoming fear. And, fear of rejection, fear of looking bad, fear of being wrong. How do you handle that in an era when what we have to compare ourselves to is, the cat video that got 4 million views overnight?
Well, first of all, I don't mind saying what's in my book out loud. I didn't write the book so people would buy it. I wrote the book so people would think about it.
Yep.
I think the key thing to understand is this: you cannot overcome fear. You cannot make fear go away. Mm-hmm. Fear denied is fear reinforced. And what we do is we dance with fear. We seek out fear. We intentionally create tension. Tension is what we get paid for. If we don't dig ditches for a living, if we don't have to, fly a plane across the U.S. without going off course for a living, everyone else, what we do is we create tension. We do things that might not work. We seek out ideas that make us and other people uncomfortable. And if you say, I need to make the tension go away and then I'll be able to do my work, mm-hmm. You're never going to be able to do your work. Right? This goes all the way back to Miles Davis. It goes back to Charlie Parker. It goes back to Mark Twain. Right? Mark Twain was in the tension creation business, and so are we.
That's interesting. So I feel you on that. And in terms of like the nuts and bolts advice to give would-be entrepreneurs, when I look at my own story, it's I would like to tell a story about how I overcame fear, and I was this like big fearless guy who just slayed the dragon or whatever. But the actual reality for me is that when I first started out, I had nothing to lose. I was a waiter, and like literally, I went and took a gamble on Wall Street, and if that didn't work out, I was going to go back and be a waiter again, and that was going to be just fine. The way it worked out is that it did work out for me. So I kind of made a bunch of money, and then I created this big cushion for myself. And so when I started, years later, this entrepreneurial venture, it was scary, and it definitely might not have worked out, and I definitely didn't want to look bad and be wrong. But I also had, 10 years of cushion to figure it out. Whereas a lot of our customers, right? We work with entrepreneurs, thousands of them all over the world. A lot of our customers aren't in that situation where they've got this giant cushion that allowed me the luxury not only of taking this big risk and taking on this big project, but also being able to sort of maintain a set of values around that kind of felt like a luxury, right? It wasn't all about making a profit. It was about making a difference, and that, I believe, has made all the difference for us.
I'm going to interrupt you because
okay.
I'm not buying this.
You're not buying it.
I think that, I don't know if you have an MBA or not, but the MBA rational analysis is a 10-year cushion eliminates the fear, and that now you can just go and do this other remarkable thing. But the entrepreneur who's struggling, who's right on the edge, who might have to give it all up, that's a whole different thing.
Right.
Well, but that doesn't explain, actors, the Laurence Oliviers of the world, who get so nervous before every play they throw up. And it doesn't explain the people I'm in the green room with before a speech who have given this speech 400 times and have $100 million in the bank, who can't look anyone in the eye because they're so scared. It doesn't explain why Jackson Pollock died in a car wreck after he had made it, finally, after overcoming all the critics. The fact is, starving to death is why we evolved to be afraid. But now we live in this culture where we have so many variations of fear. Mm-hmm. And that if you spend any time in India or other places where people are making $3 a day, they might be less scared. because they don't have all these other cultural overhangs about being made fun of, about being called out as being a fraud, about being humiliated. So what I'm saying is the tension rarely comes. And I was on the edge of bankruptcy for 10 years, so I know the feel. Mm-hmm. The tension doesn't come from, I'm going to starve to death tomorrow, right? The tension comes from imagining a future where we are filled with regret. Yeah. And there are only two ways to deal with that tension: run away from it or go toward it. And I am arguing that the marketplace has spoken and said, we want to do business with people who are going toward that tension, regardless of how much money they have in the bank. I have a whole second riff about why you should do small projects and why you should never run out of money, but that does nothing to do with being remarkable.
So say more about that. The market has spoken that we want to do business with people that are going for the fear. What do you mean exactly by that?
All right, so I need to show you a little chart here. There's a bell curve.
Oh, right? Yeah, I recognize that.
And we've all seen Roger's product adoption life cycle, which points out that these people, the early adopters, the nerds, the geeks, they are the ones who want to try something new. Mm-hmm. And the mass market, the people who shop at Walmart, they want to buy something that works. Yep. Yeah. And so if you wanted to sell a lot of DVD players, you needed to make a boring, banal DVD player for $90, not launch some fancy high-end SSD thing, right? That was conventional wisdom for 100 years. Mm-hmm. Here's what's happened. The geeks and the nerds have taught lots of people to be geeks and nerds, number one. And number two is every one of them has a microphone, every one of them has a platform, which means that the rest of the public doesn't hear from the average Reader's Digest, boring page B26 of the New York Times. The masses are hearing from the geeks and the nerds, and the time has been compressed. So if you want to get the word out, you must delight the geeks and the nerds. You cannot get the word out by saying, average people, we finally have an average thing for you. They'll never hear you. Uh-huh. And so the cycle of product adoption is dramatically accelerated, and it rewards people on the edge. So quick little example. We've got the Gap in the United States, and we have Zara in Europe. Yeah. The Gap famously went through a huge dip and almost went out of business because the Gap said, we're going to sell the same khakis every day at a good price forever. Zara built a company where every 2 weeks, they replaced every item in every store, every 2 weeks. Not only that, they go to the fashion shows in Paris and other places, copy what's on the runway, and launch it 3 months before the person who designed it can get it to market. Mm-hmm. So Zara has this fast to market, fast fail philosophy, and there's a line out the door. And Gap, people say, well, I can always go to the Gap, so they'll go tomorrow, and then they never go. So we've seen it in not just software, we see it in the other kind of software, clothing, and we see it in even the way people are choosing to be buried, right? That from birth to death, we are now in this ever faster race to be nerdier than the other people.
Huh. At the end of your book, you have actually one page where you kind of summarized several of the concepts in the book, and on the same page, you've got this story about perfectionism and like how perfect you need how perfectly round you need the world to be. Like it doesn't have to be so perfect, but at the same time, you've got to be remarkable, right? How do you figure out when good enough is good enough?
Okay, well, a few things. There's a model that says when I'm making a new thing, when I'm dancing and singing for the early adopters, it has to be new. It doesn't have to be perfect. And then the business model is you get people to subscribe to what you're doing. So this is Dropbox. Mm-hmm. This is Twitter. This is, it was new, but now I have to stick with it because I'm in. My friends are in. The network is here. So at that point, it's not new anymore. So it better be good. And it's that transition to be able to say, no one expects a Stephen King novel to be perfect. It just has to be new. But we expect that every single time we visit the kidney dialysis center, it will be perfect. Mm-hmm. Because we can find someone else who's running a perfect kidney dialysis center as long as they keep their promises. So it's make big promises and then keep them. And those are two separate tasks that must be done together to build a long-term project. So in my case, I never promise anyone that there will be no typos. I never promise everyone that every one of my blog posts will be the best blog post I ever wrote. That's not the promise. The promise is I will provoke you, it will be new, it will be thoughtful. As long as I keep that promise and still show up every day, I'm fine. But if you are in the business of selling me a utility, my glasses need to work every day, because that's what they promised.
So two different models for two different organizations, you think?
Exactly.
So in our case, we started as an organization that was promising new, and now we're at this stage where we're looking at sort of crossing the chasm that needs to get crossed so fast, and becoming more of a utility. And it's not so much about new anymore. You think it's more about it has to work every time.
That's right. So Facebook, no one quits Facebook because all their friends are there. The network effect is hugely powerful.
Right.
But if Facebook crashed a whole bunch of times, if Facebook kept breaking their promise, there'd be this huge need to go somewhere else. Because no one wants Facebook to be interesting anymore. Facebook should be invisible, and it's your friends that should be interesting.
Right.
And I would say the same thing is true of Quicken. The same thing is true of Dropbox. The same thing is true of my mailbox software. All of those things, once we get hooked on them, need to be uninteresting and perfect.
So as entrepreneurs, as sort of startups, people getting started, do you think that do you have a preference for one of those models versus the other? Should they be shipping something quickly and new, or should they be focused on creating the utility?
Well, my expression "ship it" has been misunderstood to just ship it. Just as in, what the hell, it doesn't matter, it doesn't have to be good, just put it in the world. I've never said that.
Right.
What I've said is sitting on it and polishing it to a high gleam is fear. And that you put it into the market to find out if the market will respond. Shipping it merely means the only thing you are focused on is shipping it. Until you ship it, you haven't made anything. Until you ship it, you haven't done any work. Now, the thing you ship has to be not a minimum viable product. That's misunderstood. I think it has to be an amazing product for a minimum viable audience, meaning the smallest possible group of people, smallest as in smallest you can live with, has to be so overwhelmed by what you built that now you have time and resources to make it even better.
Yeah. Beautiful. And then, meanwhile, here's Seth Godin just pumping out the golden, blog posts 5 or 10 times a week. And it's easy to feel how is it possible to even compare? And, to take another example, Neil Patel, who I'm sure you know who he is, he's not as prolific as you are. But when he does post, he posts gems. And they're incredibly well thought out, incredibly well researched, incredibly detailed, and they nail his market, right? Every time he sends me something in my inbox, I'm like, oh my God, another Neil Patel post that I have to go read right now. So where do you find the inspiration, the sort of fountain of inspiration?
Your role, and then you ask the wrong question. Okay. So, first of all, I don't write the way I write to make other people feel badly. So I apologize if people are feeling badly, but that's not my intent.
People do what they do.
The second thing I would say is, well, of course it's hard. It's work, right? And if it was easy, everyone would do it, and it's not worth anything. So we should embrace the fact that it's hard and be okay with that.
Yeah.
Number 3, one reason I'm productive is I do not go to meetings and I do not watch television. So for the person who goes to 5 hours of meeting a day and watches 5 hours of television a day, I got 10 more hours on you. And that's huge, huge. And I think we need to realize that if you are requiring the people who are making content to get it approved, to have it be cycled, to match the company needs and goals, well, why are you surprised you get banal crap? Because that's the only thing that's going to come out of the other end of that process. I write like I talk, and I've practiced talking for 54 years, and I've discovered when I say certain things, it works on certain kinds of people. So I write like I talk. So I can't get writer's block because I've never gotten talker's block. The challenge, therefore, the entrepreneur has, or the person in a large organization has, is to find a group of people who want to hear them talk. And if you're not able to find people who want to hear you talk, say better things.
Yeah.
Practice being human. Practice being real and vulnerable and say, I made this. We're not going to run out of a demand for humans who say generous things. And we just have to fix the expectations and the structure of the organization so that we're not saying, if we just do this enough times, we'll get this many people, and then this percentage of those people will turn around because they like us, buy our overpriced $10,000 a month service. Well, no, it never works that way. That what we have here is a shortage of trust. Not enough people in this world know enough people they trust, and not enough organizations are trusted enough that people say, sure, I'll try what you just said was good. And the reason we're not trusted is we don't say something's good because we believe it. We say something's good because it's our job. Mm-hmm. And people can tell. Yeah. And it's that conflict of interest that makes us untrustworthy.
So that answered a question about like the discipline of being prolific, but missed the challenge around just content. Like, you say you don't have talker's block, but I do. Like there's only so many ideas a day that I feel like are worth writing down.
I'm not buying it.
Not buying it. Okay.
Everybody I've ever met has at least once in their life done something that was artistic. Once in their life said something that was true. Once in their life said something that was funny. And if you can say it once, then you can say it more than once, because you're not just some random walk on Wall Street. You are a person who can decide where to devote their energy. That if you spend time with first grade teachers or fifth grade teachers, when they're not worried about the curriculum, they actually teach people, because they know that if you look a 10-year-old in the eye, you can say something to a 10-year-old that will change her life. Well, that's what we get to do with content marketing. We get to say, there's someone there who feels alone or disconnected or doesn't understand. Mm-hmm. Right? So I spent an hour this morning wrestling with pivot tables. I was not born, in quotation marks, to do pivot tables, and I wish there was a trusted resource online that would have made it really clear to me that I could trust them, that they spoke the way I like to listen, that could teach me what I needed to know about pivot tables. Because if they did, then I would be on the hook with them for a long time to come, every time I was in this space of saying, I feel like I need a guide. And sooner or later, if enough people like me are trusting you, and there's a little link that says, and for $50 an hour, I'll talk to you on Skype, I press the button. Mm-hmm. But that is a journey. But instead, what you see if you look online for how do I work with a pivot table is, an about.com or some other site with all these predetermined bullet points, and it's as hard to read as a manual. It's not human. Right? Well, if I can find just that one problem just this morning, they're everywhere. Yep. We just have to practice looking for them. Mm-hmm. And that's what we don't do, right? We don't practice. The name of my book, which is the one right there, was going to be Broken Escalator Theory. Mm-hmm. And I find this fascinating. You go to the airport, the escalator is broken, and people are just standing on it or standing near it, unwilling to move. You can just walk up the stairs. It's still stairs, right? It's just a broken escalator is nothing but a set of stairs. But we are trained to say, oh, it's broken, go find someone in charge. And what the internet and content marketing let us do is when we see something that's broken, we should explain to the world why we think it's broken and how we would fix it.
That's simple. So you said in this book that you just wrote, you said the book that will most change your life is the one that you write.
Yes.
And so we have, like I said, a lot of entrepreneurs that will watch this. A lot of them wonder about the time and effort that it takes to write and publish a book, and the value of doing that. And I'll count myself among those people. What do you say to an entrepreneur who's thinking about taking on a project like that? Is it worth it? And this is asking somebody who's published 15 books in 10 years or something like that, right?
There's a difference between writing a book and publishing a book.
Yes.
Publishing is a business project. that should be gone into eyes wide open. I've written 2 blog posts about it. People are serious about it. Advice for authors is what to look for. But I didn't say you should publish a book. I said you should write a book.
Mm-hmm.
And if you don't think you can write a book, then you should write a chapter. And once you write a chapter, you might want to write another chapter. If you can put down your rules, your point of view, your credo, your principles, the experiences you've had, the things that made you better or smarter, the people you never want to be with, the kind of customers you want to have. Just writing down the kind of customers you want to have is such an extraordinary transaction that it is worth whatever time it takes for you to do that, even if no one but you reads the book.
So the act of writing itself is where the value is, not the act of getting it out as a marketing tool, for example.
Right.
Mm-hmm. And then what about the idea of a book as a marketing tool for an entrepreneur?
Well, it used to be a surefire, guaranteed thing to do. That was 10 years ago. It's way less likely to work today. Now that anyone can publish a book, anyone will publish a book.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's enormous crowding going on. So if you're going to do it right. And that means devote 2 years of your life to it. Doing a half-assed job of publishing your own book is a mistake.
Wow, 2 years. That's a long time.
Well, if you don't have time to do it right, when are you going to have time to do it over?
Yeah. So I want to talk a little bit about the struggles that our clients face, entrepreneurs, around getting their businesses up and off the ground, and particularly that early phase of a business where they're kind of struggling to find kind of like product market match and initial traction. You have a book called The Dip that talks about kind of the challenges before success. And I get asked this question on a fairly regular basis, and that is, how do you know when to quit?
Yeah, the answer is you don't know when to quit, but you need to know that quitting isn't a shameful thing. That quitting doesn't mean you're a bad person. So I'm going to take that chart I showed you before and turn it upside down. There's the dip right there, right? This is where we are. This is where we are when we start, and then this is when it gets really, really, really hard. Everything that's worth doing is going to have this, and then this is where we come out on the other side, because most people quit here. Mm-hmm. My point is you should never quit here. This is where everyone quits. It's a sucker's game. You should quit here, meaning you've seen ahead and you know you don't have the resources or the fortitude to get through the dip. So don't go to organic chemistry and quit, right? If you're pre-med. Realize organic chemistry exists before you sign up to be pre-med, and don't take pre-med because you realize you can't get through it, right? Mm-hmm. That it's quitting in mile 22 of the marathon. That's such a shame. Don't do that. But sometimes we're wrong, and we are stuck in the dip. And the answer is ignore sunk costs. That's the first thing they teach you in business school. Yeah. The fact is the decision you made yesterday and the decision a year ago don't matter. All that matters is, what are your choices today? Today, you could do this or that, which leads to a better future. That's a hard decision, and it's one that successful entrepreneurs make all the time.
Yeah. And how do you take, how do you think about advice and mentorship? You've got a lot of stuff in your book about kind of like, bringing your idea to the table, and that listening too much is a way of copping out in a certain way. It's a way of giving yourself an excuse for failure when it doesn't work. Well, it wasn't my idea anyway. I see that coming up in a couple of different areas. One is in partnerships. People get partners to kind of like spread out the responsibility in a way. And it's interesting because Silicon Valley has a strong preference for entrepreneurial partnerships, it seems like. And then also in sort of like mentorship and advice kind of relationships, even with boards. How do you negotiate taking outside input like that and using it while also having the sort of internal strength to to trust your gut, I guess.
Yeah. All right, well, I'm going to have to go soon, but let me try to give you an abbreviated answer.
Mm-hmm.
The first thing I would say is that heroes are worth more than mentors in general, because finding someone from afar who doesn't even know you exist and learning enough about their point of view to say, what would Bill do? What would blank do? It scales. It's many people can learn that lesson. How would Warren Buffett behave in this moment?
Mm-hmm.
And so I think
Heroes.
the search for a mentor is a form of hiding, first of all.
Yeah.
The second thing I would say is the best way to overcome hiding is to set a date. And I've said to students of mine, I don't care if it's 7 years from now, you're going to have to pick any date, write it down, and on that date you have to ship. And so you can go to people now and say, 90 days from now, this is going out the door. How do I make it better? That's a different question than what should I do now, right? Then once we know that there's a date certain,
Mm-hmm.
as Lorne Michaels possibly said, Saturday Night Live doesn't go on because it's ready. Saturday Night Live goes on because it's 11:30.
Yeah.
And that mindset of saying the train is going makes you very appealing to investors and partners and advisors, because they want to work with someone who's going to ship. But what we spend way too much time doing is saying, I don't have any good ideas. Well, yes, you have plenty of good ideas. You're just afraid of putting that one on the table and saying, it's not my best idea. It's just this idea. Here we go.
Seth, I want to be respectful of your time. Thank you so much for being here. I feel like after following your career for a decade and reading your blog posts and your books, I feel like I've heard things today that I've never heard before. So this has been really wonderful. Thanks so much for spending some time with us.
And I appreciate your asking me these great questions.
Super helpful. Thank you so much for your time, Seth. This has really been a pleasure.
Yes. Bye-bye.
Have a good one.